You are listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan, a show that brings reckoning to today's culture and the impact on the body of the church. No topic is off the table on the quest to take back our churches.
I'm Jason Lupo.
Join Jason and Aaron and swim against the current of the modern culture.
And it's March.
It's March.
It means it's March Madness.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you got winning it all?
University of New Mexico Lobos.
Okay, I know that's like the team that you want to win, but like
University.
maybe get through the second round.
I'm not much of a sports ball guy when it comes to the NCAA. I just want everybody to have fun. And
he totally just stole that from our producer, Cool Hand Luke, who said that before we got on air.
He's not the sports balls kind of guy.
Who do you got, Luke?
I don't know what teams there are.
The team that tries the hardest.
Well, there's one of us that likes March for college basketball, and the rest of us are just sitting here. So anyways.
Sports balls of the devil.
But I do know what Aaron likes, and that is the news of the week.
I'm a news guy.
He's a news guy. He gets as much excitement about reading headlines as I do about sports.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a good chance that St. John's wins this thing. Duke has a really good shot. I like Clemson as an outside pick, but it is my team, kind of like you in New Mexico. So
I'm going to age myself, but does Duke still have that coach that throws chairs at referees?
No.
Okay, that was like 20 years ago.
I think it's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. No, that was always that made NCAA interesting to me.
I think he retired like 5 or 6 years ago.
He was just an entertaining person.
You know, you're from San Diego though, and San Diego State,
Surf's up, San Diego,
and UCSD both have great teams.
UCSD surprised me because I thought the only thing they were good in was molecular biology. I mean,
well, and we have Colorado State in the tournament, and Colorado State is actually favored as a 12 seed. To move on after the first round. That's how strong Colorado State really is.
My alma mater, Loyola Marymount University, has consistently been bad since the Bo Kimball Hank Gathers days of 1992.
No. Loyola Marymount went on that run like 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, in terms of like actually making it to anything substantial,
I think they made it to like the Elite Eight. Didn't they?
If they did, I missed it.
Anyways, maybe I'm out of it. I'm just worried about what's going on right now. North Carolina looks great, too.
North Carolina.
Play-in team, looking for the tournament win. But I'm excited. I'm excited for March. I love this basketball tournament. I love the upsets. It's any given Sunday, except, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But, it's any given day of the week.
Any given weekday.
You get these upsets, which you don't tend to get in other, professional leagues. Like at the end of the day, you kind of know that for the most part what team's going to win, or it might be a close game, but you have somewhat of an idea in professional sports. It's not like the worst team is going to beat the best team, and for the last couple of years we've had number 1 seeds fall. I
love the heart of the NCAA competitive players. They put it all on the line. You could see it in their face. It's excruciating. It's inspiring to see this will to just win. And these are just young men in their prime just going after it. That's why I'm starting to warm up to the NCAA for sure.
100%. Well, what do we got, Aaron? What are we talking about today?
Mahmoud Khalil's been on my heart and mind lately, and it's an interesting news topic because essentially what you have is you have a Columbia University student who's of Palestinian descent. My understanding is he's on a resident visa, and he's married to a U.S. citizen. His wife is pregnant, who will obviously have a U.S. citizen baby. And he has been very outspoken at the Columbia University against what he's calling Israeli occupation. He's calling it genocide on the conflict that is happening there on the Gaza Strip. And Donald Trump got involved and inserted himself in the debate and says, "You're going to get deported, buddy." And he wants him out of the country. And I think it's an interesting conversation because it's setting a precedent for deportation. It's setting a precedent for his position on the Israeli-Gaza conflict. And it's bringing this whole issue of free speech and its intersection with immigration policy in this country. And there's a lot of people that are upset. And I just hear crickets on the MAGA side of things because if you remember a couple years ago, it was the MAGA camp that was the most outspoken on censorship and free speech rights. If you remember the old days of fake news and shadow banning and getting kicked off social media, I still remember those days. And it was the MAGA camp that was the most vocal on this issue. And right now that we have an individual who I would argue is exercising his free speech, has not committed any crimes other than having an opinion on a controversial topic, is now being threatened with deportation. And so what are your thoughts on the little bit that I've shared with you?
I mean, I don't know much about this story. I'm not a constitutional expert either. I don't know as though First Amendment rights apply to somebody on a resident visa.
Sure.
If I can't answer that question. But what I will say is what happened to start the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on college campuses around the country really were focused on, like, the Palestinian protesters were violent. They were preventing students from accessing their Jewish students from accessing their classrooms. I don't know what the story is with this one, but I can tell you that, like, there's a difference between having freedom of speech and then, I'm not going to say hate crime, because I don't know as though a hate crime can actually exist, but we can debate that later, except I know Aaron's not going to debate me on that, so somebody else will have to come debate me that hate crimes can exist.
Right.
But when you are preventing somebody from getting in their classroom, when you are threatening individuals, I have a problem with that, and that is not protected speech. That's not protected actions.
Well, that's not a free speech issue. I think when you're physically disallowing somebody to enter a building, that's, I would imagine, a form of assault.
Yeah.
And I think that those laws are already in the books. And I think that if this wasn't related to the Israeli issue, this would just have been a Columbia University localized issue.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, like, yes, I think that people should be able to have their opinion. If you've listened to the show long enough, you know that Aaron and I have a differing viewpoint on this issue.
You'll come around, bro.
Yeah, but I'm very open-minded in this issue as well.
He is.
I can see both sides of the story. At the end of the day, it's a conflict that's happening in the Middle East, and it's like, what is America's role in it? I think is a very valid question at this point. What is the world's role in it? You can ask the same question about Ukraine. You can ask the same question about Venezuela, about any of the international conflicts that are going on, including the conflicts that we still have going on in Africa. And so the question at the end of the day is, what's the U.S.'s role, and do we get involved? And is there a number of listening ears that care enough to go, okay, I care to look into this issue of the Palestinian-Israel conflict more than just listening to the consensus media?
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to go back to the Ron Paul movement of 2007 and 2008 and this idea of non-interventionist foreign policy. I don't think we have a constitutional right or a moral right to be the policeman of the world, to be involved in foreign affairs militarily. I can't recall anything Israel's ever done for us specifically. I think that we're better off obeying the Constitution and involving the United States in military conflict when there's a material threat to national security and an act of Congress allows us to go to war. I mean, that's the baseline. And I think we've wandered so far off the ranch that we don't even know where we are anymore, or where our baseline is, or where we came from. So I think if we would just return back to constitutional rule of law and only get involved militarily when there's permission from Congress, we would be a lot better off, and we would also be a lot less broke and a lot less hated. I don't understand why the current conservatives in power in Washington are no longer talking about a non-interventionist foreign policy. I haven't heard Rand Paul speak up in the media lately. I do know Thomas Massie is a loyal constitutionalist, and I think we all need to rally behind Thomas Massie because he's one of the few and one of the bold and courageous that's actually speaking truth to power right now as it relates to these issues. But going back to this Khalil Mahmoud issue, in fairness to the administration, specifically the Department of Homeland Security has previously said in a statement about Khalil's arrest that he had, quote, led activities aligned to Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. And White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt alleged Khalil organized protests that disrupted campus, harassed Jewish American students, and distributed pro-Hamas propaganda. So I guess the question is, if your free speech runs parallel to a designated terror organization. You're not actually engaged in terroristic activities. You're not getting arrested with the bomb, but you're actually in agreement, perhaps, because, well, if you're in agreement with these designated terror groups, do you then lose your free speech rights, and are you now a person of interest to be deported, and your free speech rights are revoked?
I don't know as though somebody with a residential visa has constitutional rights.
Well, let's look that up. I mean, that's a really interesting question, right? Do resident visa holders have constitutional rights?
I mean, I don't believe so. I believe that the Constitution is purely for citizens. Like, and at the end of the day, what you just read to me is sounding more like what we saw in some of those campuses at the very beginning of the conflict, where we saw like UCLA, I think, had a ton of issues where they were, literally trying to prevent Jewish students from entering campus. I also think that there's a difference between pro-Hamas material and pro-Palestine material.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out.
And like I said, I don't know this story at all. The only thing I know is what you're reading to me right now.
Sure.
And so, I do, like I said, from the very get-go of all of these conversations that we had in regards to the Israel-Hamas conflict, Hamas started the damn war. At the end of the day, they started it, right? Like, they started this on October of, 23 now? Yeah. October 7th of 23. And yes, I understand that Israel has just absolutely bombed the nonsense out of that area, but, they're defending their own country too.
Well, to your earlier point, I would disagree. I would respectfully push back. I would think that the occupation of Gaza has been going on since they got into that country in the 1940s, and they've turned it into an open-air concentration camp. So to point out October 7th, 2024 as the genesis of this conflict, I don't think is true. I think that it's Israel that has been the aggressor this entire time, considering that they have been the military superpower of that region.
The United States occupied, the government of the United States occupied the entire lands of the United States, open-air concentration camps of Native Americans. Mm-hmm. You can argue that we were still, somehow by giving them Native American lands, that we were still essentially holding them in hostage in a concentration camp in a lot of facets. And maybe not a physical way, but you could make that argument. I mean, at the end of the day, every country has occupied the territory that they currently own.
And one could argue that Israel conquered Gaza, and if that is the case, then let's just be honest about it. But I think the comparison between American Indian reservations and the occupation of Gaza is an orange and apples comparison, primarily because of the treatment of these people. We're sending money to the American Indians. They're able to come and go as they please, whereas the people of Palestine are basically having their basic resources shut off. They're being mistreated. There's multiple international organizations, humanitarian organizations, and even the UN themselves have admitted that this is a crime against humanity, whereas that's not even the case. We're giving American Indians the ability to build casinos and whatnot.
And I use that as an example because at the end of the day, there are still some long-held consequences of the way that we went about setting aside those Native American lands, which is a whole other topic conversation. Sure. I'd love to get into it. I don't think it's relevant for this topic.
Correct.
But what I was trying to get at was the fact that, like, every country has occupied territory that they eventually took on or took over.
Sure.
And that's how countries have established themselves since
it's called war and conquest.
The beginning of time.
Absolutely.
And so I struggle with this argument in so many different facets and in so many different ways. Going back to this student in this
Columbia
University student, from what it sounds like to me, there could have been plenty of lines crossed in terms of potentially preventing students from entering classrooms, supporting a terrorist organization. I don't think we'd be doing the same thing if we went back to 2001. We wouldn't be having this conversation about a student promoting the Taliban.
Well, he's not promoting Hamas, and he's not being accused of preventing Jewish students from entering their classrooms. Now, if his speech is contributing to other people preventing students from entering the classrooms and other related crimes, then those individuals need to be held accountable for their individual actions. Like if I come up on air and say things that provoke others to commit crimes, that's not my fault because I didn't actually commit the crimes. But going back to your question about do resident visa holders in the United States enjoy constitutional rights as U.S. citizens, unless Gab AI is incorrect, they do. And that they have, including First Amendment rights such as freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly. First Amendment applies to all individuals within the United States, regardless of their immigration status. So, and again, this is AI. AI is still young. But if that is true, and I would agree that if you are a resident of the country, you're not a sub-citizen. You don't enjoy less. You just are here on a temporary basis, on a contingent basis. I don't think that the rights of the country are somehow limited because of your immigration status.
That's very unique to the United States because most other countries do not provide those same rights to foreigners.
Well, we're the most hospitable nation in the world, right?
Yes, we are.
Sometimes to our own detriment.
I could tell you some of those legal immigrants are walking around with nicer phones than I have.
Oh, yeah.
Paid for by our government.
Nicer cars. It's fun.
Well, what else do we got?
There's a lot going on. We have, well, give me a second here. In addition to the Mahmoud case, there's a rule of law cracking Trump White House ignoring court orders. The Trump administration just disregarded a court order to stop deportation. Axios is reporting that the White House is not denying it ignored the judge's order. Hours after this initial reporting, that Judge James Boasberg's court order halting deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. New information has emerged. According to exclusive reporting from Axios, administration officials are now offering specific legal rationale for their actions. They claimed the judge's order did not apply because the deportation flights were already over international waters when it was issued. So
I love it.
What are your thoughts initially on that?
The White House put out on social media I think it was a TikTok video that was played to the background of closing time.
Closing time.
Yes.
I thought that was what they played at the end of the night at a bar.
Well, it was them literally arresting these violent immigrants and loading them on a plane, these illegal aliens, and loading them on a plane. And the White House got a little bit of flack for that. But I love how open the Trump administration is and just like, this is the stance of the country right now.
Yeah. We have a soundtrack.
You don't have to leave, but you can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I love it. This is, at the end of the day, there's legal ways to enter this country, as we've said on the show for weeks now. And it's not that hard to abide by the law of the land or the place that you want to go. So do it. If you want to be here, do it legally, and then don't break any laws. It's not that difficult. I don't think there's anybody in America that's like, we need to make sure, well, I can't say there's nobody in America. There's probably plenty of people in America that are like, we don't want any immigrants, period. That's not the way that I stand. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I love the diversity of our country. I love the diverse foods, the diverse cultures, and I don't have any issue with legal immigration, and I think that it actually benefits our country, and it has for a very long time. But do it legally. You don't need to come across the border illegally, commit crimes, smuggle drugs. We're going to stop it, and the Trump administration has made that very clear.
Well, call me an extreme far-right radical, but I think right now is not the time to bring in new immigrants. I agree in spirit with you, Jason. I mean, my wife came in.
I'm not saying that we just openly go, like, let's take everybody, but
I know you're not.
There is a process.
What I'm proposing, if I was in government, which will never happen, is that we just completely halt immigration altogether, legal and, of course, illegal. Right now, we have a veteran crisis at home where our brave men and women who actually sacrificed everything are not being taken care of properly. We have a $1 trillion deficit. We're in debt. We don't have the ability to take on new people. We have an unemployment crisis. There's a lot of cleaning up at home that we got to do. So if I was in power, I would say, let's just go ahead and put a temporary pause on all legal immigration. Let's crack down at the southern border. Let's send the military down there and just halt all illegal immigration immediately. Let's bring our troops home. I feel like I'm running for office right now. Let's bring all of our troops home from overseas. Let's set them up at the southern border. And if the cartel wants to play, F around and find out.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at what's happening in Mexico right now, like the Mexican government is having to take and crack down on the cartels in their own country because of these tariffs and because of Trump forcing their hand to do so. But yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. Halting immigration for a short time is not the end of the world. And actually, at the end of the day, like, we are still a very growing nation. We're adding numbers very quickly, even though the left is not reproducing because, well,
obvious
when
reasons.
you're LGBTQ, you can't reproduce.
Right, that's true. Another thing, and I wish Cool Hand Luke, the producer, could cue the Creedence Clearwater Revival soundtrack, but the JFK files just came out recently, yesterday, because we're recording this on a Thursday.
We had the JFK Jr. files too, right? Like
the JFK Jr. files, were those like the little ones?
Oh, I don't know.
No, this is just remember Trump promised that he was going to release the JFK files,
yeah,
and Congressman Luna was going to lead that charge. Well, apparently they're out, and a couple takeaways. I posted this on the Facebooks, and within 24 hours I had over 400 views and 4 shares on this post, which is a lot for a little guy like me. JFK Jr. called Joe Biden a traitor. The CIA orchestrated the entire assassination. Mossad and Israel were highly involved. There were elements of the reports that indicate that there were ties to the Khazarian mafia. And Gary Underhill was murdered after revealing it was a CIA operation, #JFK files.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot, I think, more revealed as people can actually read through all of this, because I don't think anybody, as of Wednesday, has read all, I think, hundreds of pages of these JFK files. But I think this should be an actionable point, not just an intellectual study. If the CIA orchestrated the entire assassination, I think it would be incumbent upon President Trump and the Congress to introduce a bill to completely dismantle the Central Intelligence Agency. I don't know what net positive the CIA has had. Are they going to be held accountable, for killing a U.S. president on live television?
No.
So this is who runs the country, ladies and gentlemen. Jason just answered the question. Nobody's going to be held accountable. Everyone's going to move on to the next news cycle, and the swamp will continue down the road as it always has been, unfortunately. Call me pessimistic, Pam.
Yeah. If I recall, a lot of those files were still heavily redacted.
Well, Trump promised that they wouldn't be. And as far as I can tell, I don't think that they were. So time will tell. I think we need to look closer at these documents. But
I know that the Epstein documents are still the issue, that those are still heavily redacted.
Oh, the Epstein documents are probably the most protected documents on the planet. It's like Lord of the Rings over there, right?
You just got to wonder who all is in there.
Oh, everybody, bro.
You didn't like my JFK Jr. joke.
I didn't even get it, man.
You just said JFK files. And I said, and the JFK Jr. files.
There you go.
You like Junior, those small ones?
The little baby ones?
It was. Listen, I haven't had enough coffee for the day. I thought it was going to be funny. It just didn't hit.
It's not you, it's me.
I still wonder, like, how much the mob had to do with JFK's assassination.
When you say the mob, are you referring to the Khazarians? You're referring to the Italians? You're referring to the Mexicans? Who are
it was the Italians.
The Italians. Why do the Italians always get stereotyped as the mob?
I don't know. I could tell you, my dad showed up to my wedding, and we're not like ultra Italian, but he was wearing this like black crew neck sweater with this gold chain. Yes. You were there, right?
Slick back hair. I was not. No, I'm just assuming.
No, you weren't. Yeah, that's exactly. And it was like, my dad is like 80. What is he? 83. And I was like, what the heck? So, who invited the mob to my wedding? Right? He shows. My mom calls me for. Is it okay if your dad doesn't wear a suit? I'm like, I don't care. He shows up in a black crew neck with a gold chain.
My dad does the same thing. He rocks the Steve Jobs look when he's not wearing a suit, but he's supposed to be dressed up. It's like the go-to plan B for boomers who don't want to wear suits. They just rock the black crew neck or turtleneck.
I wonder if the suit shorts thing will ever become a trend. Like, I saw it online, and I'm like, no. I think you have to be 6'2" to pull it off, but
right.
And
in shape.
That too.
Border crisis to bring in biometric surveillance state. I follow this Instagram personality called Shepherd for the King on Instagram, and he's basically making this argument that the immigration issue is cover for a Orwellian biometric surveillance state, that we're going to the Hegelian dialectic, that problem, reaction, solution. We got a problem at the border, and everyone's going to react that we need to do something about it. So the solution is there's going to be a national ID. It's going to be biometric based. The tech bros have obviously taken over the government in Washington. We have Elon Musk's son screaming at Trump saying, you're a fake president. You're not the real president. And, my wife just told me I'm getting tired of seeing Elon Musk in every single official presidential address because nobody voted or elected for Elon Musk. So
I disagree with, listen.
We're going to disagree a lot today, Jason?
We're going to disagree a lot today.
I still love you, bro.
And I'm going to get to the biometric thing in a second because we got to address the Elon thing first. Elon was on stage with Trump almost the entire time. The American public was made known that Elon was going to be a part of this administration. The idea of Doge came well before November 4th this year?
Yes.
Before November 4th, there were so many indicators that Elon Musk was going to be a huge part of this administration that, yes, Elon Musk was not on the ticket. But to say that the American public didn't vote for Elon Musk is false because the American public knew what they were going to get when they voted for Trump, that it was a package deal with Elon Musk.
Do you think that was explicit?
It was very explicit. It was also very explicit that RFK was going to be a part of it.
That's true.
And that Tulsi Gabbard was going to be a part of it. These are three outsiders that it was made very clear that those three were going to be involved in this administration in a very big way, or what Trump would say, a very huge way.
Huge.
So to say that the American public didn't vote for Elon, yeah, they did. Sorry, yes, you did. You voted for Trump. You knew it was coming with Elon. That's what happened.
I don't see Tulsi Gabbard or Patel Cash, or any of these other high-level appointees in the White House every day by his side, though. And I think what we're looking at is Tweedledee and Tweedledum together all the time, all day, like BFFs for life, BFFs forever.
I don't like the. I mean, they're much smarter than Tweedledee.
That was the only thing that came to mind.
I mean.
Come on, Elon's on the spectrum, bro. Elon's on the spectrum.
I understand where you're coming from, but like at the same point, I just don't believe that the American public didn't know that this was what they were going to get.
I see your point, Jason. I just think that, like my wife, who doesn't pay attention to politics other than me ranting in the morning, I think to the average sort of, person who's not laser-like focused on these issues like we are, is a little put off. And I think for you to say that it's unreasonable for huge swaths of the American people to be put off is unreasonable, I think is unfair, because people that aren't laser-like focused on this thought they were voting for Donald J. Trump as the president. They didn't see him as a running mate.
Elon Musk is not the president. He's never pretended to be the president. There's a very specific role that Elon is playing in the White House. And so to think that like Elon is running the country, he's not. Joe Biden sure as heck wasn't running the country.
Come on, man.
Now we know the auto pen was running the country.
Uh-huh.
But like Trump is there. He's been in, even in his first term, Trump has addressed the American public more than any other president in modern time. He is in front of the American people almost every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. He is the most accessible president to the American public to put eyes on him.
He's a media president, I'll give you that.
Like, we've never seen this before in any other president. They let their press secretary handle it all, and they float in the background. They wanted to keep Joe Biden out of the public, as much as humanly possible because he did not have his faculties there. I mean, how many times did Joe Biden live stream from the Oval Office desk?
In between naps and diaper changes? I don't know.
I mean, very rarely did you ever see Joe Biden in video addressing the American public from the White House.
Well, because the last time that happened, he said, "You ain't black. If you ain't voting for me, you ain't black." And then they're like, "All right, dude, you're done, bro."
But anyways,
you're done, bro.
I mean, Trump is in front of the American people, so to think that Trump isn't the president is like absolutely just, it's ludicrous.
And I'm not making that argument personally. I'm just saying this is what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing.
Yeah. What started this nonsense?
Well, I think it was when...
Well, no. Like, we went on this tangent.
Oh, I don't know.
What was the original article that we're addressing?
Who knows, man? This is a cornucopia of news stories.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. Hang with us. Don't go anywhere.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams. Learn more at fullarmorsportsteams.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host, Aaron Lujan.
Bueno.
All right. Trump eliminating majority of the Department of Education. Woohoo! Saw on Facebook some meme that said, like, federal education employees are riding all over social media complaining about how they lost their jobs.
Well, they have nothing else to do than riot, right?
But like 40% of people can't read it.
There you go.
Because... here's the stat from the U.S., the National Literacy Institute.
Drop it like it's hot.
Approximately 40% of students across the nation cannot read at a basic level. Almost 70% of low-income fourth grade students cannot read at a basic level. 49% of fourth graders eligible for free and reduced price meals finished below on the NAEP reading test. We have this like educational crisis in America.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been happening a long time. COVID made it substantially worse. A vast majority of Colorado school districts are just now getting back to pre-pandemic levels.
Wow, 5 years later.
Which is still really bad. Like, not very great academic scores. But we're just now getting back to the subpar academic scores from COVID. It was about time that somebody went, let's make a change.
Sure.
Right. Now, the world gets stronger on competition. Correct?
Agreed.
The more competition, it raises the bar for everybody.
Trump's a capitalist. He gets it.
Okay. The education system is a system of capitalism.
Yeah.
And what Colorado does with the school choice that we have actually creates a competitive marketplace, but not enough. Because what it does is it says to the lower income, the lower performing schools, hey, if you don't get your scores up, people are going to leave your schools, opt into a different school, opt into a different school district, and you're no longer going to receive the funds for that student. Now the problem is, that's your cue to go, what's the problem, Jason?
What's the problem, Jason?
Here's the problem. The low income students that their parents cannot drive them to another school or another school district end up stuck at those schools where now they're underfunded.
Right.
And because these administrators don't give a rat's you-know-what,
Gluteus maximus,
they aren't going to try to increase their academic performance because they're just like, we lost a couple $1,000. We lost the $13,000 per student or whatever we give in the state per student. They're just going to be like, whatever. So then that money follows the student to a higher level or a higher performing school district. They get the money. The other school districts continue to suffer without the money, but they don't want to increase their academic performance. And the problem is instead of forcing them to increase their academic performance to draw students back to their school, what do? They ask for money from the taxpayers in bond measures. And what do the taxpayers stupidly do? They approve it because we got to give money to the schools. So in one facet, we created this epic capitalistic model of education in the state of Colorado. But because the administrators don't care, and because the parents don't hold the school districts responsible, they just, nothing happens. They just ask the taxpayers for more money in bond measures.
Sure.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, removing the federal Department of Education, giving it back to the states is a very powerful tool. But now, everybody in the state of Colorado needs to be looking at their school districts and going, you have to improve.
Yeah.
We got to hold the school districts accountable. What are your thoughts, Aaron?
Well, my thoughts is we need to go 30,000 feet and contextualize this conversation in the context of history. So the modern school system is, I would argue, an industrial age idea.
Oh, it totally is.
You know, this is an idea that came about when we moved from the agrarian farms to the cities during the Industrial Revolution, where we needed to train obedient employees to work for the corporations. We needed to remove people from their empowerment, which at that time was self-sufficiency in the farms, and bring them to the cities where they could be tools and cogs in these giant corporations. So the idea of getting, 30 to 40 to 50 students in one room to teach them, not teach them, but basically force them to memorize facts looks a lot like a prison system, right? The school bell ringing between periods, the fence around the campus, the draconian punishment system of, if you're a boy and you're expressing yourself for just being a high energy young man, that's somehow punished because we need to make you look like Sally. All of these ideas were for a time and age that is come and gone. And the Department of Education, like any governmental organization, does not evolve, does not innovate, does not keep up with changes in culture and in society. So I think that this is a good first step, but the first step of many that need to take place in order to save our children, to save our country, because as it's always been said, the youth are the future of a nation. And so if we're not, if we're not promoting homeschool education, if we're not reforming the public school system to adopt ideas like the Socratic method, if we're not allowing kids to move around, if they're being forced to sit in desks, if they're being punished for critical thinking, that's a problem. I took a college course one time where the entire format was Socratic. Everybody sat around in a circle and the teachers were really leading a conversation amongst the students. And that's the class that I remember the most. And that's the class that I learned the most. I don't remember all the things that I memorized in geometry, but I can promise you, I remember having my opinions changed and challenged when there was an open discussion about important topics that actually matter in real life. And that is what the true definition of education is. So this move by Trump is great. I think that bringing it back to the states will allow more accountability to the people that actually matter, the parents at the local level. But this move to abandon or to remove the Department of Education is just one of many steps that need to be taken. I think the next step should be taking measures to improve homeschool, because I really believe, as a homeschool dad, and I understand not everybody can do it because the economy has been engineered to have two working parents, where they essentially need a babysitter. But we this is the beginning of many steps that need to be taken.
I honestly think we just need to privatize the entire system. Eliminate the tax from the American public, where if you never have children for your entire life, you don't need to be paying for other children's education. And on that, subpar education.
Mm-hmm.
If you eliminate that tax, allow the parents to literally put that money towards their children's education where they want them to go, I think you'd see a huge improvement. And I think that's really a stretch because I don't think that's ever going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if we went to a more charter school model where the parents have direct impact in the decision-making of where the funds go and how the funds are spent, I think we see drastic improvements. I think that we need to overhaul the requirements for teachers. If you have a master's degree in anything, you should be allowed to teach in this state. You shouldn't have to go get a degree just in education to be able to teach, because anybody with a master's level education is smart enough to handle anything below K-12 or anything in the K-12 range in terms of teaching. You don't need a specialty degree to do it. And then I think you bring in higher quality educators when you do that, because you don't have somebody that's just grown up in the system of just learning what it means to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people that go into the teaching profession, at least from my own personal experience, have been the A students who absolutely love school, never really wanted to go into the quote-unquote real world. And, these are the people with the PhDs that, finish their second PhD and are still looking for a way to stay in the warm blanket of educational institutions. Go ahead.
We have a lot of teachers that just have bachelor's degrees in education.
Sure.
And to think that somebody with a bachelor's degree of education is more qualified to teach than somebody with an MBA, I think is false. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that if you have a master's level education, you should be able, if you so choose, you should be able to go and get a professional teaching license.
So you're advocating for licensing teachers, similar to...
We already license teachers.
So then what are you saying?
I'm saying that currently the licensing requirements in the state of Colorado and in most states is that you have a degree in education.
Oh, I see. That's the requirement that you're advocating for.
I'm saying we need to loosen those requirements, and anybody with a master's degree, I would even argue anybody with a bachelor's degree, that should be able to teach.
What do you think about people with 0 degrees and just have a ton of real world experience and have a lot of success that is documented in life? Like successful entrepreneurs, for example.
I am totally down with that. I'm thinking in terms of what you could possibly pass in the legislature. And I think that's a stretch. I think that trying to allow for teachers to be licensed without any college is going to be extremely difficult to try to pass through a legislature in any state. But loosening the requirements to just say, hey, if you have a degree from a university, you should be able to teach. Or if you have a master's degree from any university, you should be able to teach. That's a lot more. I think that you could pass that in the legislature immediately. And the thing about it is when you're short on teachers, we're short on teachers, we don't have enough teachers. Loosen the requirements.
I agree.
And then do this, right? What if we made the education system, hang with me for a second, what if we made the education system to where it was more like especially in the high school and middle school level, more like a college education standpoint, where you could have a adjunct professor that doesn't have to commit to 40 hours a week inside that school. And so that professor or that teacher comes in for only 8 hours or 12 hours in the week, and that way they can go back to their real job. Now you have somebody that's working in the real world coming in to teach your students.
I think that's a beautiful idea, because now you're actually attracting more qualified teachers who actually are going to have a better impact on these students because they live in the real world. I think what you're uncovering is the root issue for a lot of these problems is these teachers don't have any real world experience and live inside of a vacuum.
I mean, and in some cases, listen, if you are, I don't want to pinpoint any specific teacher.
We're bashing teachers today, ladies and gentlemen. And then we'll get to nurses in a second.
My wife would kill me. If you're like a lit teacher, like, what do you do in the real world? Work at a bookstore? I'm just kidding. I mean, I know we're going to get so much flack for this. I love all the teachers in the world. You guys do incredible things, and I understand how hard your job is, and I understand what it takes and the impact that you have in your students' lives if you take it seriously. If you're a teacher out there that's like, I just do it because I need the money, you're probably in the wrong profession. There's easier jobs to get money in that don't require children screaming and misbehaving. I can promise you that.
Well, I think education is a lot like politics. I think it attracts the very best people and the very worst people simultaneously.
Yeah, it's...
Because listen, I mean, if you're just wanting your 3 months of summer and you want to be done at work at 2:00, teaching looks really appealing to those like slothful people. And then you have the salt and light who love kids, who are passionate about investing in the future generations, and the very best people go into teaching. So I think it's just like government. You got the Thomas Masseys and you have the Nancy Pelosi's.
Well, there's a power struggle that exists in the political stage too, and this power trip that people are craving that
Sure.
I don't know if you really get in education.
Well, I think that if
Unless
you want to rule
over an 8-year-old,
and there are sickos that do that. I mean, I still remember 100%. Teachers that you could tell were totally getting off on the fact that they're asking me to tuck in my shirt every single day. Because they just were able to tell me what to do, and they enjoyed it. And I knew that because I was 14 and I didn't have a choice.
And you didn't want to tuck in your shirt.
And I didn't want to tuck in my shirt.
And so you let them get their see, like, if you wanted to be an actual rebellious teenager, you would have tucked it in so they couldn't get the power trip.
But see, that's 4D chess. I wasn't there yet. I was 14.
You were playing 2D chess.
I was playing 2D chess.
Not 4 chessboards at a time, too.
Nah.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I started watching that. So I started watching the show Adolescence.
Okay.
On Netflix.
The Netflixes? Okay.
The Netflix series. Have you seen this?
No, I'm not a Netflixer.
So I'm only 2 episodes in. There's 2 more to go. But it reminds me of another series that was Defending Jacob that was on, I think it was Hulu or Apple TV.
I only have acid reflux.
About a student that it was accused of killing their classmate.
All right.
And it's this the show is amazing. They shot the whole thing in one take. Like every episode is one take.
That's a gangster director.
And it's a continuous take.
Oh, that's cool.
So the hour that you're watching is the hour as it transfolded.
Very interesting.
Which is absolutely amazing from you watch it and you just, when you know that, you see everything that they did to make this happen.
Robert Rodriguez, you're on notice.
It's really cool.
That's so
cool. But what it does is it gives you this insight into the world that these kids are living in. Because we forget this sometimes as educators, people at work, youth pastors, coaches. I fall in all 3 categories: educator, youth pastor, coach.
I fall in the category of the uneducated.
Aaron shows up sometimes to the homeschool
every
academy.
Now and then. Bringing food for the kids.
Yeah. He shows up, does a little dance, and walks out.
Yeah.
I'm there all the time.
He's more committed.
Well, I am the pig. Aaron is the chicken.
Can I switch gears, Jason?
Yeah,
Speaking of chicken and pigs, the Thomas Massey. I know I'm having my man crush moment with Thomas, but he's actually suggesting that we should repeal the federal income tax. And it is tax season, and I wanted to talk about it because I think that it's the greatest form of protest against a criminal federal government. I mean, I'm of the opinion that the federal government is essentially a criminal enterprise at this point. I mean, they haven't done anything for us other than just disobey the Constitution, flood our country with illegals, send us into debt, tax us with nothing really in return. And so if Thomas Massey has his way, which I doubt it, and he would argue that the founders of this country would have never agreed to a federal income tax, and I have to agree with Mr. Massey, that we would get the attention of the federal government so quickly without firing a single bullet. Because there's no way that 300 million Americans standing up, not paying their federal income tax would even be anything that the federal government could even begin to try to control.
So is it the glasses or the curly hair that you have a man crush on?
Actually, it's the beard. And that photo that Jason's showing me right now is a beardless Thomas Massey, and I'm feeling the beard right now.
Okay. Well, so the income tax was originally, when it was first instituted, it was to fund war activities. And it was supposed to disappear. It never did. Obviously, because if you give the government an inch, they'll take a mile. And they'll never give it back to you. So the federal income tax was actually never supposed to exist. And when it did exist, it was supposed to go away and it didn't, because once they got the money, they weren't going to give it back. This is also a suggestion that Trump has had and Trump has made public. So if it is going to happen, it would happen during this administration. I could totally see it happen. I personally think that we go to a model where if you want to keep some sort of income tax, you put everything into into a sales tax. You put a federal sales tax and get rid of the income tax.
Sure.
That's what I would suggest if I was looking at doing something, and we still needed to keep a little bit of money. But throwing it, see, here's the thing. People can avoid paying income tax, but nobody's ever avoided paying sales tax.
You can't. And it's optional. You don't have to buy anything if you don't want to.
But you have to buy stuff to live.
Sure. But again, it's still arguably a voluntary
correct
purchase, whereas the income tax, no matter what, if you earn any money, the only way of avoiding it is not earn any money. And
it's not filing.
Tabletop politics, roads, schools, that's all paid for by excise taxes. A lot of people in the general public have this misnomer that federal income taxes take care of the tabletop topics, and that's not really the case.
No, because the Parks and Rec in Colorado are funded by the lottery, and the schools are funded by marijuana and other sources, obviously, as well. But by and large, I mean, like, they receive a lot of money from marijuana. They receive a lot of money from the lottery. The lottery pays for a lot of our parks and recreation. Alcohol tax.
So you're telling the people of Colorado, drink a lot of alcohol, smoke a lot of marijuana, and play a lot of lottery, all of your problems will go away?
Our schools will get better. Our parks will get better.
I'm not sure if that's good advice on a Christian radio station, but
it is not advice. Do not take it as advice.
But it's politically correct.
But as Aaron said earlier, if anything we say on the show causes you to do wrong, it's on you.
It's not me. Do not deport me to Gaza, ladies and gentlemen.
However, from a biblical perspective, if anything you do causes another brother to sin,
help him out.
Be warned.
But I'm all for it. I think that if we were to completely get rid of the federal income tax, it would be reminiscent of when Kennedy was president, when there was a reduction in the federal income tax and U.S. Treasury receipts went up exponentially, because obviously, the old conservative fiscal argument that less taxes support larger economic growth, and that trickles into the rest of the economy, and you're now lifting up the lower working class into the middle class going into the upper middle class, so on and so forth. I mean, personally, as a business owner, I would be able to make more capital investments. Jason, as an entrepreneur, would be able to invest in his pools and his full armor swim teams and be able to maybe expand if he wasn't on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the year.
Well, it's also see, and the argument goes so much further, because if you want to go with more of a trickle-down economics factor, you reduce the corporate income tax and you reduce payroll taxes, which then sparks the amount of money that goes back into the American public's pockets, which they then spend. Mm-hmm. And that causes the economy to grow. I do believe that trickle-down economics works. But so you could go one of two ways. I'd like to see both happen, that you reduce the corporate rate, you reduce payroll taxes so that companies can hire more staff. You reduce the income tax or completely eliminate the income tax, maybe put it into a national sales tax. I wouldn't have a problem seeing that. A 1% national sales tax will probably get you pretty close to where you want to be from the federal perspective.
I say starve them.
And you reduce, and then you get rid of the IRS.
Yeah, completely get rid of the IRS. So I think that if we were to implement all of these, we would see the biggest economic boom in American history. And I think we would alleviate a lot of these issues that are near and dear to the heart of the church, which is poverty, human suffering. And then maybe, just maybe, some of these moms would not be forced to work. If you want to work as a woman, God bless you. It's a free country. Many women are called into the marketplace. This is not St. Paul talking. I genuinely believe that in freedom, and I think, I have 2 daughters, and one of my selfish hopes is that one of them does go into the marketplace and crushes in business. I think my eldest has the potential to do that, but not all families want to do it. They're now being forced to do it because of inflation, because of a devalued currency. And so I think it's so important that if families want to homeschool their kids and they choose to and wish that their wives would be at home with their children, that there would be a country and an economic system that would facilitate that. Because right now we have the opposite, not by the legislative pen, but merely by economic conditions that I would argue are the result of social engineering. So eliminate the income tax, give more money back to the American middle class. They're not going to have to send mama to work, and the kids are going to be at home, and there's going to be arguably a smarter nation of children who are no longer educated by the public school system, but by a better curriculum.
Yeah, and we're seeing that the U.S. dollar is starting to really strengthen, which is something that we've talked about previously. We don't have time to go into that, but I think that would be a very interesting conversation for next week. I just made a purchase in Canada, and $1 US is 70 cents in Canada, which is, I think, the lowest it's been in a very, very, very long time. So something to consider as a topic of conversation. I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart, Aaron.
Absolutely.
30 seconds. Give us a closing.
30 seconds. I would say pay very close attention to Trump's foreign adventures. According to the Associated Press, Donald Trump threatened Yemen Houthi rebels on Wednesday that they'll be completely annihilated as American airstrikes pounded locations under their control, tandem to sending $3.8 billion to Israel, which has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands in Palestine. I thought this was a anti-war president, a peacetime president. It's starting to look like the opposite.
Well, that's a big closing. Wish we had time to talk about it, but we don't, so just leave us on a cliffhanger. This has been Spiritual Insurgency. Find us online, spiritualinsurgency.com. And starting on April 1st, we'll have a daily Insurgency.
Oh, yeah.
So excited for that. So you get to hear us every day.
And see our pretty faces.
Because we were going to video.
We're going video, baby.
So stay tuned for that.
Peace.
Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. For more information or to support the mission of Spiritual Insurgency, visit spiritualinsurgency.org. Join us next Saturday and every Saturday at 10 a.m.